If you're between 25 and 35 and you feel behind, this video is for you. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline, and not because you made bad choices. Most professionals I speak to are actually doing fine on paper. They have jobs, they have progress, they have stability. From the outside, their lives look like they're moving in the right direction. But there's this quiet pressure in the background, like time is moving faster than expected, and they're not quite keeping up. What's uncomfortable is that no amount of motivation really fixes it, because the problem isn't mindset, it isn't confidence, and it isn't effort. It's something structural no one explained until it already cost you years. And once you see it clearly, a lot of anxiety around direction starts to make sense. The strange feeling of being behind without failing. The first thing I want to clear up is this: feeling behind doesn't mean you're doing badly. In fact, it often shows up precisely because you're doing well enough. You're not failing exams, you're not unemployed, you're not spiraling, you're functioning, you're responsible, you're handling your life. And that's what makes the feeling so confusing. Because when things are clearly falling apart, you know what's wrong. There's a problem to solve. But when things are fine, you don't know what you're allowed to question. So instead of questioning the structure you're inside, you start questioning yourself. You think, why do I feel like this? Why does it feel like I should be further along? Why am I anxious when nothing is actually wrong? That internal confusion is exhausting because there's no clear answer. Where the pressure actually comes from. A lot of people assume this pressure comes from comparison, social media, other people's success, seeing peers get married, buy houses, or start businesses. And while that plays a role, it's not the core issue. The deeper pressure comes from something else. It comes from the growing awareness that the time is no longer abstract. In your early 20s, time feels flexible. You assume there's room to experiment. You assume you can pivot later. But somewhere between 25 and 35, time starts to feel more concrete. Years don't feel endless anymore. They feel directional. And that's when the question changes. Not, am I doing okay right now? But where is this actually heading? Why doing fine can feel worse than struggling. There's a strange paradox here. When you're struggling, you often feel more alive. There's urgency, there's clarity, there's something to fix. But when you're doing fine, the lack of urgency creates a different kind of stress. Because now the responsibility is on you to decide if the direction makes sense. No one is forcing change. No crisis is demanding action. Nothing is pushing you. And that freedom can feel heavy. You start wondering, if I don't like where this is going, why haven't I changed it yet? That question quickly turns inward, and instead of examining the structure of modern careers, you start questioning your own character. Why motivation doesn't solve this? When people feel behind, the first solution they reach for is usually motivation. They think I need to work harder, I need to be more focused, I need to push myself. So they do. They optimize their routines, they wake up earlier, they set clearer goals, they try to be more disciplined. And for a while, that helps. They feel productive again, they feel in control again, they feel like they're catching up. But eventually the feeling returns. But motivation doesn't change where the road leads, it only changes how fast you walk down it. If the path itself doesn't align with what you want long term, walking faster just makes the misalignment show up sooner. The quiet anxiety no one warns you about. This is the anxiety people don't talk about openly. It's not panic, it's not dread, it's not a breakdown. It's a low level pressure that lives in the background. It shows up late at night, on quiet weekends, in moments where you stop and think. You ask yourself questions like, if I keep doing this for another 5 years, what actually changes? Will I feel more secure or just more invested? Am I building something or just maintaining momentum? Those questions don't come from fear, they come from awareness. Why this feeling shows up in this age range? This feeling isn't random. It shows up most often between 25 and 35 because this is when compounding becomes visible. You start seeing how careers solidify over time, how options quietly narrow, how early decisions shape later constraints. You notice that people don't suddenly figure it out at 40. They usually just go deeper into whatever they were already doing. And that realization is unsettling if you're not sure the current direction is the one you want to compound. Direction means where that progress actually leads, what it limits or enables over time, how much control you gain as you move forward. You can be progressing quickly and still feel behind if the direction doesn't give you leverage, optionality, or control. That's why people can feel anxious even while winning. Why feeling behind isn't about age. This feeling isn't about age, it's about trajectory awareness. You're not thinking, I'm X years old. You're thinking, at this pace, where will I be? And if you can't clearly answer that question in a way that feels reassuring, anxiety fills the gap. Not because you're failing, but because the future feels vague and externally controlled. The mistake responsible people make. Responsible people are especially prone to this feeling. They do what's expected, they play by the rules, they take stability seriously. They don't blow things up impulsively. So when they feel behind, they don't immediately change direction. They try to fix themselves instead. They assume, I just need to be more patient. I just need to trust the process. I shouldn't overthink this. But patience without direction turns into stagnation, and trust without understanding becomes blind faith. What behind really means. When people say they feel behind, what they usually mean is this: they don't feel in control of their future. They feel like they're reacting rather than designing. They feel like decisions are being made for them. They feel like momentum is carrying them somewhere they didn't consciously choose. That lack of agency is what creates the pressure. Not laziness, not lack of effort, not poor mindset. Structure. The structural problem no one explains. Here's the part that rarely gets explained clearly. Most modern career paths are designed to reward reliability, not optionality. They reward showing up consistently, specializing inside one system, becoming valuable in a narrow context. If you're good at that, you'll do well. But doing well inside the system doesn't automatically give you leverage outside of it. And over time, that creates dependency. The more you invest in one path, the harder it becomes to change it, even if you're performing well. Why this creates anxiety instead of confidence? Why this creates anxiety instead of confidence? You'd expect success to create confidence, but when success increases dependency faster than it increases control, it does the opposite. It creates quiet anxiety. Because now there's more to lose, more expectations, more pressure to stay on the course, and fewer obvious exits. That's when people start feeling behind. Not because they're failing, but because they feel locked into a trajectory they didn't consciously design. This is not a personal failure. This is important to say clearly. If this resonates with you, it does not mean you failed. It means you've reached a point where effort alone is no longer enough to feel secure. It means you're starting to see the difference between working hard and building leverage. That awareness isn't a weakness, it's a signal. If you're still here, it's probably because something I said earlier landed a little too close to home. Not in a dramatic way, not in a motivational way, just in a quiet, uncomfortable, recognizable way. That's important because this feeling doesn't come from panic, it comes from clarity slowly catching up with reality. Why this feeling doesn't go away on its own? A lot of people assume this feeling will pass on its own. They think, once I get more experience, once I earn more, once things settle down. But this feeling isn't caused by a temporary phase, it's caused by a structural mismatch. If the system you're in doesn't give you increasing control over your future, time doesn't resolve the anxiety, it amplifies it. Because every year that passes adds more investment, more identity, more responsibility, more dependency. And that raises the psychological cost of change. The trap of being too sensible to panic. One reason this feeling lingers is because the people who experience it are usually very sensible. They're not reckless, they're not impulsive, they don't make emotional decisions. So instead of panicking, they rationalize. They tell themselves, I'm doing okay, there's no real problem, I shouldn't overreact. And they're right. There's no emergency. But lack of emergency doesn't mean lack of importance. This isn't a fire alarm, it's a pressure gauge. How careers quietly narrow over time. Early in your career, options feel wide. You can switch industries, you can try new roles, you can reset without much consequence. But careers don't stay wide by default, they narrow through specialization, reputation, lifestyle inflation, external expectations. None of these are bad individually, but combined, they create momentum that's hard to interrupt. And once you notice that narrowing happening, it's impossible to ignore. That's when people start feeling behind, not because they missed a deadline, but because they didn't consciously choose the narrowing. Why comparison isn't the real issue? It's easy to blame comparison. social media, peers, other people's milestones. But comparison only hurts when you already feel uncertain about your own direction. If you feel confident about where you're going, other people's progress doesn't threaten you. It only stings when you're unsure whether your path is actually leading somewhere you want to end up. So the discomfort isn't about others being ahead, it's about you being unsure. The difference between stability and security. This is the crucial distinction. Stability means things aren't changing much. Security means you can handle change if it comes. A lot of people confuse the two. They build stable lives, stable jobs, stable income, stable routines, but they don't build security. Security comes from leverage, skills, and options. When you have stability without security, anxiety lives just under the surface because stability can disappear without warning. Why confidence feels fragile. This is why confidence feels fragile for so many professionals. It's not because they doubt themselves, it's because their confidence is tied to external systems continuing to function. As long as everything stays the same, they feel fine. But they know, consciously or not, that if something changes, the options are limited. That's not irrational, that's awareness. The question most people avoid asking. There's a question most people avoid because it's uncomfortable. If I had to start again tomorrow, what would I actually have? Not hypothetically, not optimistically, realistically. Skills, systems, networks, leverage, or just a job title and experience that only makes sense in one context. Avoiding that question doesn't make it irrelevant, it just delays the moment you have to answer it. Why this is a structural problem, not a personal one. It's important to be clear about this. You didn't miss something. You weren't supposed to know earlier. You didn't fail to plan properly. Modern career paths are not designed to teach optionality. They're designed to extract reliability. If you're good at being reliable, you're rewarded. If you're bad at it, you're penalized. But no one teaches you how to convert reliability into leverage. That's not personal failure, that's structural omission. What leverage actually changes? Leverage doesn't mean working less. It doesn't mean shortcuts. It doesn't mean gambling. It means your effort creates results that aren't linearly tied to time. It means skills that travel, systems that scale, work that compounds. Once leverage enters the picture, the feeling of being behind changes, not because everything is solved, but because direction becomes visible. Why direction matters more than speed. Most people don't feel behind because they're moving slowly. They feel behind because they don't know where they're moving forward. Speed without direction creates anxiety. Direction without speed creates patience. That's why simply working harder often makes things worse. It increases speed without fixing direction. The role of agency in feeling calm. Agency is the feeling that your actions meaningfully shape your future. When agency is low, anxiety is high. When agency is high, uncertainty feels manageable. Most people between 25 and 35 feel behind because their agency is shrinking, not growing. They're reacting to circumstances instead of designing outcomes. And humans are not wired to feel calm in reactive states. Why this isn't about quitting. This conversation is not about quitting your job. It's not about burning bridges. It's not about radical change. It's about adding layers of control alongside your existing life. Small layers, deliberate layers, compounding layers. That's how you rebuild agency without panic. The power of small strategic moves. You don't need a dramatic pivot to fall behind. You need skills that create value independently, knowledge of how money and attention move, systems that don't require permission. Those things don't look impressive early, they don't get applause, they don't come with titles, but they quietly change how the future feels. Why waiting to feel ready is a deadly end. Most people wait until they feel ready. They want confidence first, clarity first, certainty first. But readiness is usually a byproduct of action, not a prerequisite. You don't feel ready because you haven't built options. You don't build options because you're waiting to feel ready. That loop keeps people stuck. Reframing what ahead actually means. Being ahead doesn't mean having more. It doesn't mean earning more. It doesn't mean achieving milestones faster. Being ahead means having a choice. Choice over time, choice over direction, choice over how effort translates into outcomes. Once you reframe ahead this way, a lot of social pressure disappears. Why awareness feels uncomfortable before it feels useful. Awareness always creates discomfort before it creates clarity. You can't unsee what you now notice. Dependency, narrowing options, lack of leverage. That discomfort isn't a sign something is wrong. It's a sign something is becoming visible. And visibility is the first step to control. If this resonates with you and you're between 25 and 35, you're not late. You're early enough to still shape the curve. Most people don't notice this until much later, when change feels far more expensive. Noticing it now is an advantage, even if it doesn't feel like one yet. A calm next step. If this way of thinking resonates, I go much deeper into this inside my school community. It's not a motivation group, it's not a hyper driven space, and it's not for people looking for shortcuts. It's for professionals who want to deliberately build leverage, particularly through lead generation, and work toward landing their first client within 60 days without guessing or gambling. If that sounds relevant, the link is down below. If not, that's completely fine. Either way, don't ignore the feeling of being behind. It's not telling you to panic, it's telling you to understand the structure you're inside and start designing your way out of it. I'll see you in the next one.